Okay. I have an approval of the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Do I have an approval for the minutes from our October meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, I'm going to
Bruce?
keep this meeting pretty tight because, like always, I think we've got the agenda maybe packed more than we'll fit in into our hour and a half. So I'll apologize to begin with if I'm abrupt when anybody's talking. But like I said, we have an hour and a half with a guest speaker that I'm targeting to have on at 5:30. First thing is Shade Tree Commission welcome. For those that are here, welcome to your new assignment. Looking forward to working with you. And we will, I promise, attend some of your meetings as well. I'm not going to go through your names because I just wanted to document who you folks are. In terms of the next agenda item, I asked Janet to give us an update on the Ready for 100 resolution status, and actually for the whole initiative having to do with Ready for 100. Janet?
Okay, well, I'd like to start out by thanking Harry for researching the many different options that we had for creating a Ready for 100 resolution for Newtown Square. And after it was created, I sent it off to Steve Clark, who was the gentleman who made our presentation last month, and also to Jim Wiley, who is the lead for the Delaware County Ready for 100. He okayed our resolution so that we are now ready to take it to the next step. And I'd like to also thank Bruce for his very concise and thorough review of the resolution talk that we had last month. And Bruce, you included all of the different townships in our area that have already joined Ready for 100. So it really shows that there's a support for this initiative.
Well,
That means that we need.
and Harry deserves all the credit. Harry put those together.
He does. He does. So now it means that we need to move to the next step, which is stated that we need to create a task force and then to create an energy transition plan. And so I'm hoping that the task force can be several of us, maybe 3, 4, that will work on what would be the steps that we next need to do before presenting something to our supervisors. Or perhaps that's not the order in which we want to proceed. So I'll open that for discussion at this point. Anything?
Yeah, I have some comments. In terms of the task force,
Yes.
could it be structured like the tree commission is? Could the resolution be adjusted to include details that are already included and be considered from the tree ordinance?
Well, I think there will be overlapping areas for sure.
Mhm.
But I think we need to have kind of a pretty clear idea of how we are proceeding. I have reached out to Sarah Pilling. Those may remember her name, who were on the 2019 June meeting that we had. She came with Bill Saby to make the initial presentation. She is from Radnor. She's on the EAC. She pushed to have Ready for 100 passed. So they are ahead of us, and they have hired Practical Energy Solutions to help them move forward. And she says she's willing to share whatever ideas they have. They haven't presented them yet, but I think it would behoove us to partner with her for one, and to move us forward, kind of have an idea of how to get through the weeds.
That sounds great. Good.
I
had thought, Bruce, I had thought that we were going to get comments from members of the EAC if they had any, and thereafter send it to Steve Neese for consideration by the Board of Supervisors. I suppose he'd want counsel for the township to review it, and that those people who would, and I would suspect there would be some people in the EAC who would be interested in being considered for membership in the task force, would identify themselves to the township. But I guess I really thought the next step was to see whether the supervisors were willing to act on some form of this, however it would get edited.
I think that's a good idea. Before we invest too much time in working on the next steps, we could present it almost as is to the supervisors to see if they have an appetite for us to move forward and put further details into our proposal.
Well, why don't you do this? This is just a suggestion and it can be completely disregarded, but why don't you move forward with putting together a committee to draft the resolution, have on that committee a supervisor, which I'm shooting myself in the foot because I'm sure it'll be me, right? That way you're not slowing the process down. You can continue to move forward on this while also having a supervisor on there that might be able to provide some insight. Hey, this might work, this might not work. For instance, that's exactly what we just did. We're in the process of having a historic preservation ordinance completed. And so Tina and I worked with the Historic Society as representatives from the Board of Supervisors to try to, move it forward in terms of letting them know what we think would be palatable and what wouldn't be palatable from a supervisor's perspective before we then gave it off to council to then review. It's just an idea. If you're worried that that's going to still have you invest too much time into it without having a guarantee, then you can disregard it. But I just don't want us to present something to the Board of Supervisors and the board says, well, this is all we have right now. So we can't say whether we're going to be doing or not doing it. I'd rather have us kind of working towards a completed document and a supervisor be on that committee to give the input from what they think the supervisors will be thinking.
Right.
Well, we already have written or put together a draft resolution, which I think your idea, Leonard, of having a supervisor on it, because we want, of course, by the end for all of our supervisors to support it. And we wanted to really run it past other members of the EAC and also Steve Neese, because Steve Neese's name is on here. He has to sign it. So we wanted him to have an opportunity to see it. But I think perhaps let's see if there are any comments from our other members of the EAC, and then we can pass it on to you and to Steve. And that's my take on it at this point.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with that. I think I would like to give people in our group a week or two to take a look at that resolution. I just really distributed that a few days ago.
Yes.
And then come back with comments. We'll tie up the document. And then at that point, we'll be in a position to pass it on to the supervisors for review.
Or for Leonard first, so he could see whether there's any problems with any particular item, whereas, and I think also Steve, since as we all know, his name is on here as Township Manager.
I should say, as the person who put this together, that there's almost not one iota in this 2.5-page document which is new. In other words, we have roughly, well, we have 300 to work from because a number of municipalities and states have done this, including a number in Pennsylvania. But I didn't, there's no free writing in here. I mean, that's not to say we don't welcome comment. It's just to say that all of this is pretty heavily plowed ground at this point.
Yes, and Jim Wiley had no additions or deletions that he wanted to make. He was the one who reviewed it as the lead for Delaware County.
Well,
I'm sorry, Cindy, go ahead. I'll wait.
okay, thanks, Sheila. If I can chime in, I don't believe that you've circulated a copy to the other EAC members, have you, or did I miss it in my email?
I intended to. Did other folks get it?
I did.
Now I'm looking.
I'll recirculate in the event it
Yeah.
went in the wrong direction, but I did send something out. I thought I included everybody in the distribution list.
Well, that's very possible, Bruce. So the reason I say that is I note your point, Harry, that you said it's very much boilerplate and there's probably not a lot of edits that we would make. I would just feel better if all the EAC members had at least taken a review of it and given it our blessing. You know, there might be some minor thing we want to personalize or something to our township.
Mhm.
And then proceed on. And it probably shouldn't take very long for any of us to review it because, as you said, so much of it is pre-formatted and not really.
Bruce sent it around on the 27th of October, and I don't think he missed anybody.
Okay, well then that's my bad. I'm sorry. Then
So
I will look at it.
that was our intention all along, was for every member of the EAC to get it first after Harry put it together.
Okay, well then I am remiss. So I will review it in the next couple days and pass along any comments I have, and then you can move ahead.
How about this? I'll ask everybody to comment if they have any comments by the 15th of November. And then we've set a deadline, and then we can work on forwarding it to the supervisors.
And I also think it'd be important if we do have a chance to hear back from Mike and Leonard. I know it's election time and right now they're probably so inundated with other things that have been on their plate. So if we give them a little bit of time to kind of digest it and then everyone get back to you on the 15th sounds reasonable. Thank you, Bruce, for that.
Certainly. Harry, does that?
Sure. Good.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion on that just so that we have documentation. Do I have a motion to accept our plan to complete the review of the resolution as now written by the 15th of November? Do I have an?
As I understand it, we're going to have comments come in and by the 15th, right? And then we're going to digest them and maybe circulate a revision for the December meeting. Is that's what the aim is?
That's what I think. Yes.
Okay, good.
Sounds good.
Let me seek approval again.
Sounds good.
Approve.
Aye.
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 Okay, we're all set. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, can I respectfully request that I go out of order and just say the piece of information I wanted to share with the EAC because I am going to have to jump off in a few minutes? Do you mind if I say what I do? Because I think it's a good piece of information that everyone here is going to want to know. So this involves the Fort Joy development, in other words, known as Cherry Blossom Lane or other names that have been attributed to it. So just a little bit by way of background, if everybody recalls, there was the conditional use application filed in 2017. Board of Supervisors rejects that conditional use application. Then that decision gets appealed to the Court of Common Pleas, and a proposed settlement was created. The township held a hearing on it back in April or May, and because there was a petition to intervene that was filed by the Springton Point Homeowners Association, as well as all the public comment, decided not to act on it until the petition to intervene was acted on by the court. The judge, as you know, denied Springton Point Homeowners Association's petition to intervene. And they being Mr. Pupio, then decided, even though that their petition to intervene was denied, that they would bring all the parties together to try to come up with an amicable solution. There was a, I guess, solution that was agreed upon, if you will, by the original party protestant, the Springton Point Homeowners Association, and Mr. DePaton, that the placement of Cherry Blossom Lane would be relocated, not to line up directly with Stony Brook Boulevard, but instead would be, and I'm going to give rough estimates, maybe 150 feet to the, I guess that would be east of where it originally was located. So, you know, in the middle of where the conditional use application was and where the settlement came up to. The Board of Supervisors has decided that we are, one, we're not going to enter into the settlement agreement, and two, we don't like the somewhat agreement that came up with the homeowners association and the developer. And so it is our position that we're going to have the judge just rule on the conditional use application. So that proposed settlement agreement, where it had the zoning relief, is out the window. That is no longer a viable option. It is now just the judge to rule on the 2017 conditional use application. So I wanted to share that information with everyone because it's a new development, and it's one that I think is important to share because it's some good news.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Leonard. That was a pretty brief, clear synopsis of everything and the update. So can you say again where we are now and like what happens next?
Yep. So where we are now is that the proposed settlement agreement is out the window. That's gone. The proposed settlement agreement that did, if you remember, two things. It placed Cherry Blossom Lane to line up with Stony Brook Boulevard, and it also provided a bunch of zoning relief to the applicant. That settlement agreement is no longer existent. What it is now is that the judge is only going to be ruling on the conditional use application for the placement of the road, which is the original location, which is located right above the bridge there on Gradyville Road.
So does that mean that the plan that is back on the table is the plan back from 2017?
It's just the conditional use application. There was no plan that was ever submitted in 2017, which is one of the other reasons, and Steve, jump in if I'm wrong, one of the other reasons that the board rejected it is that it never showed any sort of benefit to Newtown Township. There was no development that was proposed in 2017 with that conditional use application for homes in Newtown Township. It was just a connector road from Marple Township onto Gradyville Road. That was one of the few bases that the Board of Supervisors then decided to reject it. So now all that the judge is ruling on is that appeal. As we said from the very beginning, no matter what a road was going, there was a very strong likelihood that there was a road that was going to be coming through because of the case law that was in favor of the applicant. And so what's most likely going to happen is the judge will rule on the conditional use. Actually, the judge has to rule on the conditional use appeal, and it'll most likely be in that original location.
And what's the timing of that? And is there any role for the township or the EAC to make comment or to the judge? Or
So to answer the easy question first, there will be no ability essentially for anyone else who's not a party to provide any public comment, because it's not, what a judicial hearing is. It's just going to be the judge looking at the case and ruling on the merits of it. So there's no, and that's what you want in a court proceeding. You don't want a judge who's going to be swayed because people are coming in and stacking the back of the courtroom. And two, you also don't want a legal proceeding where one could be swayed or provided the opportunity to provide something, some sort of public comment if they're not a party to the litigation. In terms of the first part of your question, which is the time, the time of the judge to rule on the conditional use application, I don't have that information right now, Cindy, but what I can do is I'll touch base with our solicitor, Mr. Sikora, and find out when the next hearing is, or what the newest development is in terms of where we are on that.
Thank you. That was excellent. Thank you.
I think we should note that we're thankful that the result to date is what apparently Leonard has just told us. It's entirely consistent with the views that the EAC expressed in their letter to the supervisor.
Absolutely.
And I'm loath to assume that we really had much effect on the result, but we happen to be on the right side of the angels here, and we'll see it go forward. But what Leonard is telling me is the judge is only being asked to rule on what was in fact before him, and not the 400 things that weren't before him.
Yep.
Avoid
Yeah, and
him.
as I said before, I mean, I always, and I didn't make any secret of this, I always had a problem with the amount of zoning relief that was in there. The rest of the, are you guys still there? Can you still, sorry, I'm doing this on my phone. I was never a fan of the zoning relief that was in there. And so where we are now is that settlement agreement's completely out the window, and it's just the conditional use application. And I do have to say, I do think that the information that was provided from the EAC to the Board of Supervisors, regardless of whether this fell through the way it kind of processed out, I think that I am confident enough to say that I think the outcome still would have been the same because of the documentation that was provided from the EAC, as well as the public comment that was provided. I mean, this is how local government works. This is the process, and the process worked the way that it was supposed to, in my opinion. You have a standard. We had to follow that standard, that process. And I think this is a big win for Newtown Township, and I think it's a big win for that environmental aspect of those woods.
This member of the EAC is very happy with your news, Leonard.
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
did you just say you're happy with me or the news?
Well done, Leonard. And of course to Harry and Cindy, who worked so hard on that comment as well. So well done to all three of you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Best
Yeah,
news I've heard today.
and I appreciate Leonard and Steve being at our meetings and having the dialogue. I think that helps.
Yeah. And with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I stole enough of your time. I'm going to run out of here. Cindy, I will be following up with you personally because I want to hear about the update that you have on this. And then I'll look forward to hearing from, I guess, Janet in regards to the resolution just to make sure it keeps moving forward. So you guys have not heard the last of me, and I will be in contact. So I'm happy I'm leaving with some good news.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
We're gonna skip the next item for now because of the 5:30, an attempt for a 5:30 presentation by our guest, Rick Ray. Is Rick here?
I believe he is, it says owner Liz Ball, but that is him. If you could, Rick, we're ready for you.
He should be able to unmute himself and turn on his video.
So Rick, if you could unmute yourself and turn your video on.
You gonna introduce briefly who Rick is?
Would be glad to do that. I just have to,
Am I on yet?
I guess we hear you.
We hear you.
great. Okay, Rick, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to introduce you briefly. I heard Rick get recognized last week by the CRC at its annual celebration dinner, where I believe he was named Volunteer Steward of the Year. And I think that was probably well-deserved given Rick's many contributions, mostly in Marple Township. Marple, briefly, Rick Ray is on the Marple Township Tree Commission. And to give some background, he earned his BS in ornamental horticulture at North Carolina State and his master's at Virginia Tech. He taught horticulture for 7 years at Templar Ambler and then 20 years at Delaware Valley College in Doylestown, where he also managed the campus nursery and the Arboretum there. And he teaches at the Arboretum School at the Barnes Foundation. And as co-chair at the Marple Township Tree Commission, he coordinates the planting and care of all trees newly planted by the Tree Commission. He responds to resident requests on behalf of the Code Enforcement Department. He serves as the liaison to the Park and Rec Board, the Board of Commissioners, and township officials. So he's a busy guy and contributes a lot. Now, he does have several Newtown Township tree connections in that he said Steve Mastardi is actually one of his former students from Temple University in the 70s, and that Steve and Ray and Paul Seligson worked together on the re-landscaping of the foundation planting at the high school.
Nice.
And that I can tell you also that he consulted with George Sheritz on the establishment of the Newtown Township Public Works Tree Nursery. And finally, before I turn it over to him, I suggest that after the meeting, you check out the Marple Township Tree Commission website, because they've got a lovely website that's nicely done and very informative. So whatever Rick doesn't get to cover during the meeting today, you can look at there. But I really thought it was relevant to invite Ray to talk to us, since we're embarking on this initiative to plant 1,000 trees, and we can learn from some of the things one of our neighboring communities have done.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to make a little caveat there. Our website is sort of at a inactive position right now, and some of the links don't work. Ever since the COVID took over, we have been trying to link up with the township and have them improve our website. So it's available, but it's not anywhere near what it used to be. It's not up to date, plus. So just to give you a little background, Liz Ball, which you probably see on my picture here, and I started the Tree Commission based on our seeing that the EAC was not really doing anything in that area. And we had a little bit of a hard time starting it. The township wasn't really interested in tree huggers, and we sort of overcome that eventually. But we have about 5 people who are appointed by the township. We have probably 20 people who are associated with us. We've planted in, I think started in 2013. So we have about a number of Arbor Days under our belt, and we're going to have an Arbor Day on Friday because we want to have an Arbor Day each year, even though it's not as much pomp and circumstance as it normally is. That will be at Friday at 4 o'clock, where I do a little demonstration on this tree at the firehouse on Route 3. We have approximately 13 parks and a few more areas where we do plant. We planted approximately 400 trees in the public areas, approximately 300 trees in what I call our relief area. Relief referring to all the trees that are being taken down on a daily basis. There's a need to replace them. And so we have 2 women that are my age who do the plantings, and they site the tree. Private. And this is on private property. They site the tree, they plant it, protect it from deer, give the people a 5-gallon pail with 2 holes in it, and we call that a drip pail. So it's a slow watering system. The trees are, if needed, be protected by a deer fence of some kind. At the base, we put about a 1-gallon nursery pot where we cut the bottom off and slit the side and put it around that to keep the 2-legged creatures with their machines away from the trunk. Yeah, I think I see a smile on Stephen's face. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. So we have a nursery over at Greenbank Farm next to Hildesty Farm. It's about 60 by 30. We put it up with a deer fence. It is not on township property. It's on Bill Brainerd's former property. We have approximately 300 trees in that nursery. And in my backyard, we have approximately 40 trees that are related to the relief program. Everything is bare rooted. If we get something in a pot, we take it out of the pot and bare root it, because then we know what we're dealing with. The roots are the key. We have a commissioner as a liaison until the last 2 or 3 years, where the commissioner was not able to meet with us. So we have an alternative. Our funding is through the Park and Rec Commission, based on the impact fee that we get from developers, which started in either the late 80s or the early 90s, which is intended to give the future residents of the developments a place to bring their children, playgrounds, and so forth. And that money is also used for improvements in the capital improvements in the parks, like playground equipment. The a note with the other areas that we work in, I made the mistake of volunteering at a county meeting when I saw there was a problem with the trees along Route 252 when they expanded it and they took the trees down. And when they put the trees in, they put it on the staging area. The ground was hard and compacted. They put small trees in. They were in pots. They were planted too deeply. The deer got them. The weed eaters got them. And they stopped watering after 2 months. So I've maintained those trees. And then we planted approximately 52 trees since then. These are tree vitalized trees, all bare root, approximately 8 to 10 feet tall, some taller. And I maintain those, and I maintain the shrubs and trees by the spring house and Rose Tree Park. In this particular case, maintenance is the key to this, and the problem is planting shrubs. So I've turned as many shrubs into trees so I can protect only the trunks. I don't have to worry about the plants outgrowing their cages. The tree cages have been lifted so you can put mulch underneath them. The trees are protected on their trunks and also on the base, which we call ankle bracelets. Just to let me digress, etc. Going back to our bare rooting, is that we take the plants out of the pots and we call it waterboarding. So we have a hose, just a regular garden hose, and we have a special nozzle, looks like an old-fashioned fireman's nozzle, and we get more pressure and we blast the soil off the roots, and that way we can see the problems within the root ball. And that gives me a sense of satisfaction knowing the plant goes in right, as opposed to root systems that are wrapping around and being a problem in the future. Sometimes girdling plants. Sometimes I've had a pot that's probably a 12-inch pot or so, and by the time I got the roots out of there, it was 2 feet on either side of the pot. So these are the things I try to avoid by bare rooting.
Ask if they have questions.
Anybody have any questions as you go along, feel free to break in.
I see you're getting advice there.
Yeah, my former high school teacher and the garden writer behind me, Liz Ball. She has articles in the Town Talk and used to be the Springfield Press.
Yep. Rick,
called
Rick, I do have a question. So when you're doing the watering putting to the trees, are you using a high pressure water, or is it just a hose? Because won't that damage the root tree system by using any type of pressure to it?
The pressure that comes out of there is not that strong.
Okay.
It takes a while. I have used a pressure washer,
Right.
and working a pressure washer up from 0 pressure up to a certain point. And when the bark starts coming off, you know you've gone too far.
Okay. Right. But you're seeing that the root system is responding well to that?
I would say a 99% chance of success. I have lost very few trees that way. I've had some trees really, they came in basically dead and I didn't know it.
Right.
Generally speaking, I can pick out a dead tree, but sometimes, things just, they were on the way out, and those things happen.
Did you ever use any biogel or any type of dipping to the roots after that, or?
No, when the tree vitalized root trees come in, they are in 4 foot by 4 foot plastic bags, and those
Right.
trees are dipped in a gel before they're put in the bags at the nursery.
Okay.
We've planted trees basically all through the winter. I bare rooted a 21-foot honey locust at Christmas last year.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's over at Greenbank Farm. Let's see what I was going to say now. Can't remember what I was going to say, but
You were talking about the tree that you planted with the when you it was dipped, and
yeah, nothing more on that. It's just that oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. We basically plant from when the leaves drop in the fall all the way until the 1st of June.
Ooh.
wow.
And for the last 2 years, most of our planting was in February, March, and April. May. Once we get to the point where anything's starting to leaf out, we start looking at the type of plant that we're planting. Some plants are more able to tolerate the later budding out. I would have to say the most successful is putting the tree in the fall. The earlier the better, especially if it's already without leaves. But as you probably know, the trees are coming in next week from Tree Vitalize. We're getting 36 trees. George, I think, is getting 19. And we're going to have to put those into what's called a healing in situation. Rotted wood chips or a compost, the plants are unwrapped, they're pruned to make sure there's any, remove any problems associated with crossing branches or bad broken branches or multiple leaders. And then we store them until we get ready to plant them. They can be stored from now until next year or the year after. The trouble with if you have them too long there, they start getting away from you and they get big and awkward to deal with. So a couple tips here. We always try to plant high, which means above 1 or 2 inches above the original soil level. You want to make sure that the plants, when you put them in, don't have a lot of space underneath them because the soil will sink. Especially in the old days, people talk about putting peat moss in the hole, and the peat moss disintegrates and therefore the tree sinks. We use wood chips to mulch with. We take the soil out of the hole, we chop it in order to get the roots of the soil fine so it will filter in with the roots. And we use a 20-gallon nursery pot, a heavy-duty nursery pot, so we don't have to clean up in the grass afterwards. So you can tip it over, put it into the hole and roll it.
I'm sorry, Rick, say that again. What do you put in the hole and roll?
We take the existing soil out of the hole and we put it, when we're digging the hole, and we put it into a 20-gallon nursery pot. It's approximately 15 inches, 20 inches wide, and maybe about 20 inches deep. And you chop it up, and that way it becomes relatively fine, and you can filter it in with the roots. We do not water these trees when we put them in, except late in the season. When I say late in the season, I'm talking about in the spring. When they're dormant, the rains will take care of them. We don't have to worry about the leaves desiccating because there's no leaves there. It's the roots are the key. We will use a tube, about a 4-foot tube to protect from deer. We slit what's called a tubex, and we'll put it around the tree. When it comes to, and we'll take that, we'll put it on in about the 15th of August. That's the first deer rub that we find. And then we take it off in March. We then go to the next step where we take a plastic fencing and we put it around the tree trunk and tie it with twistums. And that can stay on all year round. We get the light to the tree, we get the air to the tree, and so there's no negative effects from that. And it will pop off if it gets too big. But the whole key is maintenance and checking things on a regular basis.
Rick, can I jump in? I do have a couple questions. I'm still thinking about something you said at the very beginning, where you gave the numbers of the trees that are on your property and are in the nursery.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and I'm thinking about the administrative part of the program, of getting the trees, paying for the trees, planting them. You know, you said that you kind of plant throughout the year, and you have 2 ladies that plant the trees.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking hundreds of trees.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's very different than what we've been doing here. Is we have a spring community planting event where we order about 15 trees, and sometimes we get shrubs, and we get community volunteers, the EAC, Parks and Rec. Sheila has connections with St. Anastasia. We get 30 to 40 high school kids and their parents and teachers or whoever. And so we have community volunteers, and we do the big planting all on the day after we get the trees. And we've done it all on township property, but I'd like to understand, it sounds like your timing is different. And then also, in terms of who plants the trees and when you plant them. And also you mentioned something about putting them on private property. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay, here's the difference. We have these 2 women that works only with this relief program on private property. Those trees we sometimes get from Home Depot when the price goes down and to next to nothing. And those trees, we always have to bear root. We get donations. I go down to trade shows. I pick up trees. I've had as many as 60 trees in my car, 60 trees, shrubs, and vines, and whatever. So there may only be 20 trees in the car. And it's just a Honda CRV. But I know how to stack them in. And those, many times, the plants are maybe 6 to 8 feet. Sometimes I have to cut the tops of them off because I can only get a 9-footer in the car. And sometimes when we do buy trees, we pay for the trees out of our relief budget. We have approximately $2,000 in our relief program. And the trees that are planted on township property, some of those same people will be involved. We have a number of people who are what I call experienced tree planters. So when I have the Williamson Trade School or community service plant the trees, I have much more quality control, because for every 3 people that are planting a tree, or two to 3 people, I will have one of my supervisors oversee that. And that way it gets done right. I don't like losing a tree. Now, when it comes to the planting events coming up shortly, we'll be getting the trees in on a Wednesday, and there's a map put out by Pennsylvania Horticulture Society that will tell people where to go for planting of these trees. But in general, I will plant in groupings. I'll have maybe 9 people helping me plant a tree for a day, like from 9 to say 2 o'clock when the community service. And they take like an hour for lunch. And we will put in 15 trees. One year at Whirl School, I put in 19 trees. Would have 2 vans, and that was November, and it was a cold day. I had a pregnant woman on that one. I had a guy that overdosed. I mean, it was an interesting time, and it was an adventure. Liz had to drive the guy home to his grandfather.
Wow.
So that was, you just find all sorts of things happening. So we will be having a hard time this year because of COVID and getting people to plants. I've got one person that says he's coming up from Maryland. I've got one person says they're going to bring their son. So, but so far I haven't gotten a lot of volunteers. So one of my goals is to tomorrow is to contact the community service people to see if they're active, but I don't believe they are. So these trees will be sitting for a while. And if I plant 1 tree a week, minimal or whatever, that's 36 weeks.
Wow.
What do the property owners have responsibility for in this process?
Well, they're required to sign a form. They agree to water once a week in that pail, of that 5-gallon pail. They get an email or a call, if they don't have email, when we have drought, what I call a horticulture drought. So twice last summer, we had horticultural drought, and they were requested to water twice a week. They water for 2 years. Now, with the township plantings, about 5 years or so ago, we had 120 volunteers watering plants. So the plants get watered for 2 years. So you can see that some of those same plants are watered, 2 years in a row. So that's why it's so many. This woman who does this, getting the volunteers, it's like a salesman that goes door to door. You get, turned down a lot. In certain areas of the town, you get turned down more. But she was a real winner. Right now, we are at the point where we are, I wouldn't call it shoehorning trees in, but we have filled up the parks pretty well. And we're just slipping one in here, one there, maybe something died, maybe somebody drove over it with a mower. These things happen. Let's check my listing here. One of the things that was a problem over at the Rose Tree Park, which I think is a good thing to look out for. Poison ivy. They planted the trees in poison ivy. So those people who chose the spot have to be careful about where they plant these. If there are trees or shrubs next to the trees you're planting, there could be a possibility that porcelainberry, which is our biggest problem in the parks, at Don Guinella site, all over town. This is a killer vine. And this porcelain vine, you can cut it back in the middle of July, and it will be back 20 feet by the end of the season. Oh, also have to watch out for the wild rose bush, the multiflora rose. That was one of the killers over there. The problem with planting where you have a shrub near or a tree near one of your plantings, the vines will use that as a bridge to make it over to your plant. Also, one of the key features that I've developed is you raise the cage up at least a foot off the ground, because that gives you another foot. So it's a 4-foot cage. It brings it up to 5 feet, which definitely will solve the problem of the deer rubs. Plus, you can reach underneath, grab the weeds. You can see the weeds, the vines coming up on the cage, and you can mulch at the same time if you need to remulch.
So Rick, what do you mean you do the cage a foot high? Is this like a metal cage that's out from the tree and it's supported by stakes, or is it more like a tree guard?
Okay, there's several ways we do this. In one case, we could put as many as 4 stakes around, and we'll use lightweight deer netting, and we'll stretch it from one side to the other, go all the way around. In another case, we will use plastic garden fencing and go around. And in a third case, we'll use a metal fence like is over at the Rose Tree Spring House area, where again, we raise it up. In this particular case, we use 2 stakes when it comes to the metal fencing, because it has more rigidity, and you can protect the plant very nicely with the 2 stakes, or I should say, hold up the cage. Let's see.
So you rest the cage on top of the stakes?
I do it several ways. If you have the stakes that have the metal stakes with the hooks on them, where you can just drop the metal cage onto it, that works very well. What I do to secure things is I get a lot of old or new, whatever I can come up with at a yard sale, electrical wire, preferably a 14 gauge. And I cut those into anywhere from 6 to 8 inches, and I just wrap it around. It has a memory, so it holds the wire fencing to the stake. And when it comes to the what I call the collars, or the pots that I put at the base of the plant, I put 4 holes in them after I slit them and take the bottom off. And then I'll take that same material or twist them, and I will put the twist them through the hole to hold that so it doesn't blow away. And with the tube, the Tubex tubes, in order to keep the wind from blowing it away or the deer from messing with it, we take either string or plastic tape and run it around the things. And I was over at the firehouse today, sighting the plants, or the tree, and there were 2 cages, 2 tubes that had blown off the trees because for some reason, I don't remember why, I do. Some of the trees over there that were planted last year had spotted lanternfly. So they took the tubes off so they could spray them. And when they put them on, they didn't put the string back on.
Right. Wire.
That's what happens when you have people that are not under your control replace things.
Are you going to be showing this entire process this Friday at 3 o'clock?
At 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock at the firehouse.
You'll do a demo.
Yeah, there will be a demo. Every year I do a demo. I think you can see pictures of me doing the demo on our website. Plus there was it might have been the Marple Newtown magazine, or one of those that I was on the cover showing how to do it. So I'm real
Right.
doctrinaire on how to do it right.
Okay.
That sounds
Well,
interesting, Rick. I have a question for you. You mentioned that when you're planning on the private property, and obviously there's forms that are required, can we get a copy of what the resident signs? And is there
Sure.
any protection for any liability in the future if, let's say, a tree that's planted by one of our volunteers and there's some consequences years down the road with, issues of that tree or any liability issues? Is that already addressed in your documents?
No, it is not. That's
Okay.
and I don't think anybody ever does anything like that. It's I wouldn't say buyer beware, but whether the person plants it themselves or the a
Or
landscaper
if you're a volunteer, right?
puts it in, they don't give any guarantee. We only guarantee that we give is if the tree dies within a certain period of time, we replace it. Unfortunately, some people just don't read the instructions. One person was watering it every day and the tree
Oh,
died.
wow.
And there's other
Well,
people.
the residents aren't paying for these, right? The residents are not paying for this. This is a gift that you're giving to the
No,
residents, correct?
no,
Or is there some?
no.
Oh,
The fee is approximately $30 to $60. It can be more depending upon the plants. I've put in 12-foot trees in, and I've put in 5-foot trees.
okay.
And so there is a range of sizes. We put out a list. Now I'm not sure it's on the website, but in the past there's been a list, the description of the trees. I think we averaged maybe 60 trees a spring, and planting those a spring, and there was probably 100 trees or more to choose from.
Oh, wow. And I have a friend from your township, and she was a senior citizen, and she had mentioned that they give out free trees to senior citizens. So maybe she just not informed properly, and she's assuming that it was free, or is there something for senior citizens that's given consideration for that?
The plant, a lot of these plants we put in are worth $100, and we charge them $30. And the cost, if you have a landscaper come out, they'll charge you $75 just to come out to plant the tree. So a lot of these trees are worth $200 or $300 to $500 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we charge. Our goal is to replace the trees that are being cut down on a daily basis. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they are, some of them are senior citizens. They're afraid that the tree is going to be too big. They don't want to rake leaves. I mean, I get a lot of different things that come up. We have very few street trees in town. The ones that are on Springfield Road, coming from the township up to Pet Boys, those trees are in a tree strip that is only about 15 inches wide. We have said that there will be no trees planted in small spaces like that. So we require approximately 4 feet minimal. And on the other side of the sidewalk, which is where we preferred, should be a minimal of 4 feet toward the house. I've seen too many trees lean out and pop the sidewalk off. There's no reason why you should do that. I've seen in media where people are, somebody is planting, I think, tree vitalized trees under the wires right on the main street. That to me is not a good thing. The trees are usually pruned, whether you like it or not, at the bottom wire, which is 15 feet. Not positive, but I think it's something like 9 feet headroom over the sidewalk and maybe 13 feet over streets to allow trucks to go by. So you've got to, look at that as when you plant the trees. We are an advisory commission. I know former students of mine from various places that I've taught, whether it be Radnor or Nether Providence or wherever, many of them are sitting in a room and just looking at plans. Our township has not given us plans, and with our new township manager, there's supposed to be a change on that. With the COVID, we have not gotten any plans, but I've been promised that. Because if you look at Starbucks out on Route 3 in Marple, you will see they planted these Zelkovas, and they are basically touching the wires the day they put it in. If you look at the new hotel on Lawrence Road, they have these shade trees, again, sugar maples or swamp red maples that are planted within feet of the lowest wire already. So this I do not want to happen. And the only way to solve that is to get the plans ahead of time. And that's what we're concerned about with the new renovation of Lawrence Park.
How do you decide who gets the trees? I'm just wondering whether demand is greater than supply.
Actually, it's almost, you have to beg the people to take them.
Except
some people have gotten 15 trees. Other people, all they want is one. Sometimes there's a postage stamp for the front yard, and we put in a red bud or a small tree, a Japanese maple or something like this. When it comes to areas that have larger properties and would love to put really shade trees along the streets. But I think Haverford gives away trees, and I think it's funded out of the budget of the commissioners, and they're, believe, giving away free trees that are shade trees for planting along the streets. Oh, let's see what else is. We have some people that don't even want to plant a tree. They want to help in other ways. We have some people that just deal with Arbor Day. We have another person that gives us advice on computers, but they don't actually do anything. We have people that aren't in our township that help us plant trees on a regular basis. But we're basically a small unit, and I put about 6 months of the year into this, and everybody's a volunteer. My recommendation, if you are going to start a shade tree commission, is to get somebody with a professional training or an educator. Next would be a master gardener, somebody that's taken extensive courses at Longwood, at Williamson Trade School, at the Barnes, because I've seen too many plantings that were paid for, and because they didn't know what they were doing, was a disaster. The percentage was 50%.
Wow. Wow, that's really good advice, Rick, because we did just launch a shade tree commission here in town, and fortunately, there's some very qualified people on it. But that was very, very informative. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on to our other agenda items, but I want to thank you again for taking time to speak with us about the work you're doing in Marple. It's very helpful, and I've learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Right.
Cindy has
Yes.
gotten several emails from me with various pictures and whatever, so you might want to check with her. And
Thank you.
see what she's gotten. And I think the one of the biggest things is checking on a regular basis on the trees, making sure that the trunks aren't rubbing against the stakes, making sure the ties are not getting caught in the crotches. We have a person assigned to every park in town. And once a month, they are going around looking at it, and they turn in a report. And I then look at the report and go out and solve the problem if they haven't solved it or can't solve the problem. If there's a storm, I suggest they go out right after the storm, because anything can happen. Trees fall on it and whatever. Anyway, as you probably know, teachers tend to talk. So I will stop talking, and that's my.
Thank you, Rick. So
tonight.
your demo is 4 o'clock on Friday at Broomall Firehouse.
Correct. Mhm.
All right, perfect. I'm hoping to get there.
Great.
Thank
Enough.
you. And are you available as a resource for us if we have questions?
I have helped Bruce, I'm sorry, George in the past. I've helped the people over at Haverford at the rec center. So yes, that is true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to move through the next couple agenda items. Actually, we're going to defer a couple. The decision on tree planting, I hate to say we're not going to do it after that great presentation. It really doesn't make much sense. We're not really organized for it, and there are some COVID challenges, obviously. Second thing I'd like to just move to, the next thing is, actually, I'll give it your call, Cindy. Would you prefer to spend the next 10 minutes or so on the Stormwater Task Force or the Stormwater issue down at Greer Park?
Well, I'll do both, because the first one is I have nothing to say about the task force because I didn't know I was supposed to do anything.
Okay.
It was my understanding that Steve and Leonard had taken that idea back to the board, that they were considering it. And I thought that the ball was in their court, and we were waiting to hear what their thinking was and how we could help move forward.
Yeah, it is going back to the board. Leonard and I have talked about it, so that will be the first next step.
Okay, so we will wait to hear from you. Great. On the stormwater management at Greer Park, Wade had reached out. Wade, I forget his name, Pollock, the chair of the Parks and Rec, who's also on the Greer Park Task Force, reached out last week to a couple of us on the EAC with a question that the consultant had made some recommendations about, kind of a very specific recommendation about creating a forebay for the pond to capture the sediment, because this has been a point of discussion and concern about the rate of sediment accumulation in Greer Pond, and how that might impact the task force recommendations and the decision to remove the dam or what to do. And I know Wade and I had documented some storm events during the summer where there was really quite a bit of erosion and sediment coming off the Ellis and Lissitor properties. And were concerned about that and had submitted complaints or notices to the Delaware County Conservation District. And the contact person there, Michelle Ferry, did follow up on that. And I spoke with her for 45 minutes today. I will give you a hopefully 3-minute summary of what she told me. And that being that after she received our photos and documentation of what to us looked like insufficient erosion and sediment control during construction, that she did visit the properties and file a disturbance inspection report in which she noted, I actually had provided photos of an eroding swale the day before the storm. So she had a couple things to follow up on. Other than filing that report, I don't think anything has come of it. I think she said she has not been back to check the site. So that might not be a bad thing for us to check them. You know, like many government people, I think she's stretched very thin. So she hasn't been back to check on that. However, she did give me some heads up on what's happening. She said, especially with the two basins closest to Wawa, that Ellis Preserve is moving into its next phase, which is more residential and retail construction on, I'm not sure quite where. I guess there's a little bit of open space left there, and they're gonna put more.
It's the section between where the hotel, or not the hotel, where the apartments are now and Winding Way, up through, there's like a big curve space that goes all the way up along Winding Way. And that's between Charles Ellis Drive, which is right where the Mainline Health Building is.
Yep.
So that area in there, kind of where the old President's thing is, that whole area.
Oh, God.
Which is why we need a historical preservation act, because they tore down the president's house. But anyway, side note. So anyhow, she said that what's going to happen is that they have a new erosion control plan. They're going to remove the earthen berm between the two detention basins. They're going to change some of the baffles in there. There's a baffling system that kind of alternates like this, so that when the water comes through, it hits those baffles and the sediment filters out. But there are going to be changes to those two detention basins to prepare for this next level of construction. And I asked, the significant thing is here, she had no idea about anything going on at Greer Park. She's never been to Greer Park. She didn't know that the dam was going to be removed. She didn't realize that the water, all the water from Lissitor and Ellis eventually ends up there. And I explained to her why we were so concerned and documenting all this sediment from that rainstorm, that it ends up in Greer Pond and that there have been observations of sediment accumulation. So point noted there, it helps to keep these people in the loop, because she had no idea about that. So I asked her, I said, well, if these, that August 4th and 5th storm totally overwhelmed what was in place there. And this is the second important note, is she said that the current regulations only require that those erosion and sediment and stormwater controls handle a 2-year storm. Now, what we had obviously was not a 2-year storm. I don't know what it was, a 100-year storm, a 200-year storm. And we are getting more and more of these storms. So the point here is that a lot of the stormwater standards are based on old data from previous weather patterns and do not reflect the changing precipitation patterns that we're having with climate change. And right now, the 2-inch storm standard is the state standard, but townships are able to enact standards that are higher. If Newtown Township wants to change its ordinances to impose a higher standard for bigger storms, that is something we can do. So important point there. The other interesting thing she said is that not all the rain from this new residential development is going to end up in those 2 detention basins. There's also going to be some underground detention with a managed release system and some rain gardens. Because I said, we're very concerned that if all the additional rainfall from this construction is going to go into those stormwater detention basins, you know, it'd be very unfortunate if on separate but parallel tracks, the township made a decision about changing the pond and whatever it's doing in Greer Park when the whole stormwater situation at Lissitor and Ellis is not finalized and confirmed to be under control. And the final point is that I was asking her about her role in monitoring and reviewing plans. And she told me something I did not know, which is Delaware County Conservation District does not have engineers on staff to review the post-construction stormwater management plans. Montgomery County does, Chester County does, Delaware County does not. So we do not have that resource available in our township. And I could say a lot more, but I'll just leave it there.
We've got a 6:25 hard stop. So what I'd like to do is conclude the meeting now. We're cover the items we missed via email this next month, or they're find their way to the next agenda.
We just want, Bruce, can I just mention one thing when we're talking about Greer Park? That issue is going to be, you know, the EAC is going to want to weigh in on Greer Park. We're right now in the formulation of presenting some things to the supervisors. So it's going to be important that we at least start thinking in our minds what EAC stance would be that, but it would be very helpful for the EAC to weigh in on that issue and provide that documentation back to the committee as well as to the supervisor. So it's just something for us to put into our file for a future thing.
Okay, Sheila, why don't you and I take that up offline so I understand the timing and what you're looking for.
And
Yeah,
also,
the timing's moving pretty quickly. So if you guys want to be involved, we need to get moving on it.
We need to get moving, absolutely. So you're clear that we're not doing the November 21st planning at all, correct?
That's right. Well,
Okay.
my opinion.
Okay. All right. I'll talk with you on that, Cindy, then.
Okay. Sorry to take up that time. Sorry.
Let me hope that no one has any public comment. Have you seen anything, Steve?
I've not.
Okay. And we at this point can adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Real quick, Janet, on your 2 things, was there anything that happens between now and the next EAC meeting?
No, these are meetings that I already attended, so I could report. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't need to get information out.
Thank you
I'm
very
sorry for the hard stop. I have a 6:30 that I have to have started.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
much. Drink of water.